Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be going way back and exploring the story of the Tower of Babel from Genesis chapter 11.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is, isn't it? We've got so much interesting material for this.
Yeah.
You've shared your notes, a couple of scholarly articles, and even a snippet from a sci-fi novel
Right.
that kind of reimagines the whole thing, which I thought was pretty cool. We'll try and get through it all without, having our own linguistic meltdown.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So the story starts with humanity post-flood, unified by this single language.
Right.
And they're just bursting with ambition.
Yeah.
The kind of ambition we just don't really see these days, you know?
That's true. That's true.
What do you think was going through their heads, like trying to build this tower that reaches to the heavens? I mean, was this pure hubris, or was there something more to it? And then why did God decide to intervene?
Well, the text really does emphasize their unity. It's repeated several times. One language and one speech, like you were saying.
Right, yeah.
And this unity isn't just incidental. You know, it's like the key to their incredible ambition to build a city with a tower.
Yeah.
That literally, it seems, wants to challenge the divine.
Yeah. And it's not just the scale of the project that's interesting, right? It's like they specifically chose to use brick and asphalt. These materials that represent a real departure from the more natural building techniques that we see earlier in Genesis. It's not just building a shelter, it's a statement.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What do you make of that choice?
It definitely suggests a shift in their relationship with the natural world.
Yeah.
There's a sense of mastery.
Yeah.
Even domination that wasn't there before. It's like they're saying, we're not just going to live in the world, we're going to reshape it.
Yeah. It's interesting because the text itself doesn't condemn the tower, but it does say that God was concerned about the potential for this, like unchecked human power, right?
Right.
Like there's that line that's always like really gotten to me. Nothing that they propose to do will now be withheld from them.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like, God's worried about what they might achieve if they just stay this unified and this ambitious.
And that's where I think we get to the heart of the story and its enduring power. It really forces us to ask, even today, where is the line between healthy ambition and destructive hubris?
Looking at some of your notes here, you highlighted instances where technological advancements have kind of outpaced our ethical frameworks. You brought up things like the development of AI or even something like social media,
Right.
which can connect people, but then it can also be used to manipulate and divide. Do you see like parallels between the Tower of Babel and these modern anxieties?
Oh, definitely. Like, how do we balance the incredible potential of human ingenuity?
Yeah, with the need for ethical considerations. For a sense of shared purpose that goes beyond just like individual ambition.
Totally.
And the story of Babel, it seems to suggest that it's just a question that we've been wrestling with since the beginning,
Right, since the beginning. And then, of course, we have the famous intervention, the scattering of the people and the confusion of their tongues.
Right.
It's fascinating how their strength, their unity, becomes their downfall through the very thing that had united them.
Yeah.
Language.
Yeah.
It's almost like a cautionary tale about the power of communication, both to unite and to divide.
What's funny? In your notes, you've got this quote from that sci-fi novel that you shared.
Oh, yeah.
Where they imagine the Tower of Babel not as a physical structure, but as kind of like an early version of the internet, this network that collapses under the weight of misinformation and hate speech.
It's a really interesting take.
Yeah. It's like it still speaks to us.
It does. And it goes beyond just technology. Like, look at political polarization, cultural clashes, even something as simple as a miscommunication between friends or family members.
Oh, yeah.
The breakdown of communication can have such far-reaching consequences.
So what do we do about it? The story, it kind of seems to suggest that the diversity of languages is an inevitable part of the human experience. But how do we bridge those divides? How do we build understanding when we don't even speak the same language?
Right.
Literally or metaphorically,
That's a question for the ages, isn't it?
Yeah.
But maybe that's part of the point. The story, it doesn't give us easy answers. It presents us with this fundamental challenge of the human condition. How to navigate difference, how to build connection in a world that's inherently fragmented.
It really gives you something to think about, that's for sure.
It does.
But before we get too lost in the philosophical weeds, I want to explore another interesting aspect of this chapter, which is the sudden shift to genealogy.
Right.
Right after the Tower of Babel story, we get this incredibly detailed account of Shem's lineage. And it traces his descendants all the way down to Abram, who of course later becomes Abraham.
Right, right.
Why do you think this genealogy is included right here, like smack dab in the middle of all this talk about, ambition and language?
Well, it's not just a random list of names.
Right.
It serves a really important narrative function.
Yeah.
Remember, the people at Babel were scattered to prevent them from achieving unchecked power.
Right.
But amidst all this scattering, a chosen lineage is being preserved, this thread of continuity that links back to the covenant God made with Noah after the flood.
So it's like God saying, don't worry, even though I've scattered humanity, I haven't abandoned my plan.
Right, exactly.
I'm still working through this particular lineage, guiding history towards its ultimate goal.
Exactly. And that's where Abram comes in. He's not just another name on the list.
Right.
He's the one who will inherit the promise.
Yeah.
The one through whom God's blessing will be extended to all the nations of the earth.
So the genealogy, it's not just a distraction. It's actually like setting the stage for the next chapter in God's unfolding plan for humanity.
Totally.
It's highlighting this idea that even in the midst of like disruption and division, there's this like deeper purpose at work.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But it's not a straightforward path.
No.
The journey to fulfill that promise is filled with twists and turns, challenges, triumphs, and it all starts with a seemingly minor detail. Terah, Abram's father, decides to migrate with his family from Ur to Canaan.
To Canaan, right.
Okay, I'll admit, when I first read this, I kind of skimmed over that part. It seemed like a little bit of a detour.
Yeah.
But now that you mention it, there's something kind of intriguing about this journey. It's like a microcosm of the larger themes that we've been talking about, like ambition, displacement, the search for a new beginning.
Yeah. It is, isn't it? And as we dig deeper into the story of Abram's journey, we'll see how these themes continue to play out in surprising and sometimes unsettling ways.
Ooh, this is getting good.
It is.
We'll pick it up from here in part 2 of this deep dive. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're picking up our deep dive into Genesis 11, right where we left off, with Terah packing up his family and heading out from Ur.
Yep.
It seemed like a small detail at first, but I'm starting to see how this journey kind of connects to the bigger themes we've been discussing.
It really does. In a way, Terah's journey kind of mirrors the scattering that happened at Babel. It's this idea of displacement, of leaving behind the familiar and venturing into the unknown.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the text doesn't tell us exactly why Terah decides to leave Ur.
Right.
It just says he sets out for Canaan.
Which is the land God promised to Abram's descendants, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They never actually make it to Canaan.
Oh.
At least not in this chapter.
Oh.
They stop in a place called Haran and settle there. And it's in Haran that Terah dies.
So it's like this interrupted journey, a promise deferred. And it makes you wonder why include this detail at all. It seems almost anticlimactic after the drama of the Tower of Babel.
Well, remember, the Bible is full of these seemingly minor details that end up having huge implications.
Right.
And in this case, Terah's decision to stop in Haran has a profound impact on Abram's story. It's like a turning point, a moment where the trajectory of his life and ultimately the fate of nations hangs in the balance.
Yeah, that's what makes this so fascinating. We're not just reading a history book.
Right.
We're engaging with a story that's layered with meaning, with these echoes and foreshadowing that invite us to dig deeper.
Absolutely. And one of the things that struck me as I was reading your notes is how you connected this idea of Terah's interrupted journey to the experience of migrants and refugees throughout history. There's this sense of displacement, of searching for a home, that I think resonates with people on a very deep level even today.
That's a really powerful point. I mean, we often talk about the Tower of Babel as a story about the origins of language, and the dangers of ambition. Yeah. But maybe it's also a story about migration, about the challenges and opportunities that come with leaving behind everything, venturing into the unknown.
Precisely. And I think that's why this seemingly small detail about Terah's journey is so important. Yeah. It sets the stage for Abram's own journey, which becomes this epic saga of faith obedience and ultimately the fulfillment of God's promise. But it's a promise that comes at a cost, a promise that requires sacrifice and perseverance.
And it all hinges on this one decision, this seemingly random choice to stop in Haran.
Right.
It's amazing how these small moments can have such a ripple effect throughout history.
It is, isn't it? And it reminds us that our lives are interconnected in ways we may never fully understand.
Yeah.
The choices we make, even those that seem insignificant at the time, can have far-reaching consequences, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come.
That's a pretty heavy thought.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of inspiring in a way. It means that our lives matter, that even the smallest acts of kindness or courage can have a ripple effect that extends far beyond our own immediate circle.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that makes the Bible such a powerful and enduring text.
Yeah.
It's not just a collection of stories and rules. It's a mirror that reflects the complexities of the human experience. The joys and sorrows, the triumphs and failures, the hopes and fears that we all share.
It's like a conversation that's been going on for centuries.
Right.
A dialogue between generations wrestling with the big questions of life.
Yeah.
Who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going?
Exactly.
What does it all mean?
Exactly. And I think that's why it's so important to keep engaging with these stories.
Yeah.
To keep asking questions, to keep searching for meaning, even when the answers are elusive.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. The idea of the Tower of Babel as a story about migration.
Right.
You were connecting it to the experiences of migrants and refugees throughout history.
Yes.
Can you say a bit more about that?
Of course.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me about your notes is how you highlighted the fact that the scattering at Babel was not a voluntary migration. It was a forced displacement. A disruption of their plans and ambitions.
Yeah.
And I think that resonates with the experiences of so many people who have been forced to leave their homes due to war persecution or natural disasters.
That's a really important point. It's easy to romanticize the idea of migration, of setting out on an adventure to a new land.
Yeah.
But for many people, it's not a choice.
Right.
It's a matter of survival.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the Tower of Babel story, even though it's set in a mythical past, speaks to that reality. It acknowledges the pain and loss that come with being uprooted, with having your language and culture disrupted, with being forced to start over in a strange and often hostile environment.
And yet there's also this sense of resilience in the story.
Right.
The people who were scattered didn't just give up. They adapted, they built new lives, they created new cultures. And in a way, that's a testament to the human spirit, to our ability to overcome adversity and find meaning, even in the midst of chaos.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the key takeaways from the Tower of Babel story.
Yeah.
That diversity, while it can be challenging, is ultimately a source of strength and resilience. It's a reminder that our differences, rather than being something to fear or suppress, can actually enrich our lives and make us more adaptable in the face of change.
That's a beautiful thought. And it's a good reminder for us today as we navigate a world that's increasingly interconnected and yet often divided by cultural, linguistic, and political barriers.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect place to pause for.
Okay.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve deeper into the story of Abram's journey and explore how this seemingly small detail about his family's migration sets the stage for one of the most significant events in biblical history.
I can't wait. This deep dive just keeps getting better.
It does.
We'll be back soon with part 3, so stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into Genesis 11. It's amazing how much depth we've uncovered in this one chapter.
I know, right?
We've talked about ambition, language, the scattering of people, and now we're focusing on this seemingly minor detail, Terah's journey with his family, including Abram. It's like a small seed that's about to blossom into something much bigger.
It really is. Remember, they set out for Canaan, the land God promised to Abram's descendants. But they stop in Haran and settle there. And it's only after Terah dies that Abram receives the call to continue the journey.
It's almost like this pause, this interruption, is crucial to Abram's story.
Yeah.
Like he needed to break free from the past, from his father's legacy, in order to fully embrace his own destiny. It's like a symbolic cutting of the cord.
That's a great insight. And it speaks to the complexities of family ties, you know, of how our parents' choices can both shape and limit our own paths. It's a theme that resonates across cultures and generations.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because in the sources you shared, there's this article that explores the psychological and sociological implications of migration. It talks about how leaving one's homeland can be both liberating and traumatic, how it can force you to confront your own identity and values in a new light.
It's a process of reinvention. in a way. And I think that's what we see happening with Abram. He leaves behind everything he knows, his family, his culture, his homeland, and steps out in faith, trusting that God will guide him.
That takes an incredible amount of courage to do that. It's like jumping off a cliff and hoping you can build your wings on the way down.
It is, but it's also a powerful reminder that sometimes we need to let go of the familiar in order to embrace the unknown, to step into the fullness of who we are meant to be.
And that's ultimately what makes Abram's story so inspiring. It's not just a story about migration or family legacy. It's a story about the power of faith, about the transformative potential of saying yes to God's call, even when it leads us down an uncertain path.
And it's a call that echoes down through the generations, challenging us to examine our own lives, our own choices, and ask ourselves, what are we holding on to that might be preventing us from fully embracing our own calling?
That's a powerful question. And it brings us back to the themes we explored at the beginning of this deep dive. Ambition, language, the scattering of people. In a way, Abram's journey is a continuation of that story. He's taking the fragments of a broken world and forging something new, something that will ultimately bless all the nations.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and division, there's a deeper plan at work, a thread of hope that runs through history, connecting us all to a common source and a shared destiny.
It's an incredible story, and it's amazing how much we've been able to unpack in just this one chapter of Genesis. We've gone from the towering ambition of Babel to the intimate journey of a single family exploring themes of language, migration, faith, and the enduring power of God's promises.
And it all started with your curiosity, your willingness to dive deep into these ancient texts and uncover the layers of meaning that still speak to us today.
That's what makes these deep dives so rewarding. It's not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about making connections, seeing the world in a new light, and maybe even discovering something about ourselves along the way.
And who knows? Maybe this deep dive will inspire you to continue exploring, to keep asking questions, to keep digging deeper into the mysteries of life.
We certainly hope so. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Genesis 11. Until next time, keep exploring.